Welcome once again. We do continue with our weekly Fan and Press Luncheon with JMU men's basketball coach Matt Brady. Can you hear me okay there, Coach?
I can.
Okay, good.
Yes.
That's good. First of all, congratulations. A historical week for the JMU men's basketball program, as it did mark the first time that the Dukes went to both Northeastern and Hofstra and came home during the same season with a victory on both of those floors. So that's never happened before in the history of the program. The Dukes also beating Hofstra. That's the fourth time they've gone to overtime there. First victory for the Dukes in an overtime. And for the first time, the Dukes are 6-0 in road games, true road games. That, too, has never happened for the JMU men's basketball program. You're smiling. Good results this week,
You're just
Coach.
an encyclopedia of information here,
Well,
Kurt. There's a lot of new information there.
Well, that's what we do when we have 6-hour bus rides on a Saturday night. Figure those things out, Jason and Dave and I. So just certainly you got to be very proud the way the Dukes played last week.
You mentioned first overtime win. The one that sticks out in my mind is the loss when we had a chance to win my third year, and Andre Semenov committed a lane violation when Devon Moore was on a free throw line to give us a 4-point lead, and we lost that game. But so we were, it wasn't as you mentioned right after with me on the radio, Kurt. It was a game to me where any play could have tipped the scales for either team. It was really hotly contested, very emotional on the sidelines. I thought that both teams played really, really hard, and both teams wanted it, and we were fortunate that we came out on top. The previous game against Northeastern, obviously we've won there before. We lost another game at the buzzer at Northeastern when David Walker, as a freshman or sophomore, made one on the baseline. So we've played well in those two venues. But I think the fact of the matter is we felt like we controlled the game at Northeastern. Neither team controlled the game on Saturday against Hofstra, but it was good to see Jackson, Shakir, and Yohani play well in the same game for the first time in some time offensively. And obviously Ron has been very consistent throughout, but to get Jackson, Yohani, Shakir playing well, I thought Tom played well on our bench again, made some timely plays.
Coach, your defense has been superb, I think, all in all, and you have the ability to take things away from your opponents. And probably the thing that stands out the most is you're having the ability to take away a top scorer, and typically it is a three-point perimeter shooter that you're negating. How are the Dukes doing that?
Well, you're right in that I think our guys have done a really good job paying attention to scouting reports and recognizing what we feel is really important. Whatever we think is important, our guys have done a really nice job taking away some things. In the second half at Hofstra, we played a lot of our 3-2 zone. That's the sixth time we've used it in every game. 5 of the 6 we won the game, but even in the game that we lost, Elon at home, it got us back into the game. So all 6 times we've used it, I think it's changed the flow of the game. But I do think, our perimeter defense has been very sound. I think one of the things that we're benefiting from that I think is a big deal is that we have continuity in the program. This is the third year for a lot of these players that we've coached. I've said this time and again, I think sometimes people in general don't pay attention to this, but this is my 8th team, and this is the first team where most of the team is back from the year before. Either we haven't lost anybody from injury from last year, but the fact that we've had continuity and this team is growing up, it is mature, and it is learning exactly what you have to do to take things away from other teams. I think that's very significant that it's a team that we've had back for the second year in a row.
Your three-point defense right now is at 29%, and that ranks 13th in the country, so that certainly says, a lot there. I'd like for you to also to address Ron Curry's progression as a shooter. When he came in, he had a hitch in his shot. We were talking with Coach Brooks a little while ago about what he's doing with his freshman Kayla Cooper-Williams at the free throw line. But you look at his numbers; they're not always up on the incline, but for the most part, he has a much better shot now than what he does, and particularly looks very smooth when he's taking a three-pointer. It's been also rewarding to watch that progression for him.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think myself and the whole staff, we feel good when we feel like guys are getting better. It's not unusual. His path to this point is very, very consistent. What I've seen through all my years in coaching, young high school stars come in and think that they have to change very little to their game, and then their freshman year they learn a lot about how hard it is to be a really good college player. And at the end of Ron's freshman year, even though he shot 29%, he was very reluctant to change his shot. But at the end of his sophomore year, when he went I think he went down a percentage point. He shot 28, I think, as a sophomore. He was very eager to kind of learn what do I have to do here to get better. And then last year, significant jump, almost 20 points for three-point percentage. And this year, I think he's shooting really good from the three-point line. And I still think he takes hard threes. The end of regulation on Saturday, kind of a sign, like he's got great confidence in his three-point shot. But I still try and teach Ron at the end of the shot clock, unless you're down 3, you really need to drive the ball and try and get a paint touch off the dribble. And he's got such great confidence. He took a really hard 3 at the end of regulation versus Hofstra. But he's made those shots. He's made those shots for the last couple of years. But it is gratifying to see a good player, a talented kid, buy in, pay attention, learn, and get better because of it.
Where do you feel Yohani is now? He's had back-to-back couple of good games, getting over maybe that psychological block that he had seemingly a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I don't know, because I was really struck how little impact he had in the games for almost a month. So the fact he's had back-to-back significant games is hopeful. I'm optimistic. No reason to think that he won't continue on this trend. But obviously you see what he means to our team. And now the conundrum for our staff here is to get Dimitri and Yohani to play well in the same game, which hasn't happened very often. But it seems odd to us that, Yohani's played 2 really good games and Dimitri hasn't been quite as good. So really, that two-headed center is probably the best center in this league if we can get him playing well in the same games.
Yeah, you didn't use Dimitri as much against Hofstra on Saturday. Why was that?
Well, number one, they played all zone, and we didn't want to have 4 guys on the perimeter. We wanted to have, against that particular zone, we felt like we needed to have 2 guys in the lane, somebody at the high post to play through, and somebody in the low post to post. Dimitri's not as comfortable playing against zone, and he's not as comfortable playing inside, although he's obviously comfortable playing against man-to-man inside. So if you kind of process that for a second, very comfortable playing on the post when it's man-to-man, not terribly comfortable playing on the post against zone because there's a second post player, or second defender lurking. So he looked completely out of his element versus zone inside. If I had just put him in the game and let him wander around the perimeter, he would have gotten up more shots and maybe he would have made them. But we just thought it was important that we had some inside presence, even though we didn't get as many baskets inside as we maybe would have liked. We had to have those post players guarding us in the lane.
Also, I think obviously their rebounding for Hofstra is a very good skill that they possess, particularly one Gusti's fella that pulled down 20. Just having other players in the game give you more rebounding opportunities.
Yeah, well, number one, he had a great game. Gustis was terrific. We went into the game knowing he could have great numbers. But a lot of times he gets a lot of his points off his either the feeds from Wanye Green on penetration, or he gets them on second shots. In fact, almost all his points came from those 2 areas. Like he got second shots and layups, and he got second shot fouled and free throws, 7 for 14 for the game, and he had 3 layups off Wanye Green's, driving kicks. So we thought it was really important to kind of keep Wanye Green in front of us as much as we could, so his penetration wouldn't hurt us. And then really we just didn't do a great job blocking him out again. But again, it was mostly zone where Rokas Gustis hurt us on second shots. And give the kid a lot of credit. He's got a great nose for where the ball is going to carry him off the rim when the ball's in mid-flight. So not an easy guy to block out, but we've got to do a better job on him.
All right, let's turn it over to other members of the media. It's Weird O'Neill's Groove with our weekly Fan and Press Luncheons with men's basketball coach Matt Brady.
Coach, you've talked a lot about the scouting reports that your players get. Talk about how those are prepared by your staff and the time that goes in and looking at tendencies, because I've been able to sit through some of your meetings, and they're very thorough in what these players have a likelihood to do.
Right. So a couple different things you're looking at when you're scouting your opponent. One is schematically, what are they doing offensively or defensively? How is it different than what you've seen before? The other thing that we pay a lot of attention to is, individual tendencies. Do guys like to drive it? Do they drive it one way or the other? Where do they like to catch the ball on the court? And I think every game, including our losses, we've done a really good job scouting, preparing our team. And I'll say it again, in a couple of games that we've lost, our energy hasn't been where it needed to be. It's the reason why we've lost. In the road games, I think our energy level's been terrific. Hasn't been an issue. And now as we turn our attention to Thursday night, I'm hopeful that our energy level is really high, because I do think our players' attention it's all in. Our guys understand it. And I think in our last loss against Elon at home, it was really, I thought Ron Kerry didn't do a really good job with a high level of energy, and that's been unusual for Ron. But our guys have, and again, continuity, guys are a little bit older. We have a lot of juniors. They recognize that the coaches spend a lot of time on tendencies and schemes. Our kids completely understand that's this staff, and our staff does an unbelievable job, my assistants, kind of picking up on things that will help us, and obviously the numbers would bear that out.
Thought the last couple of games, Winston and Joey both have made big plays at stages where you really needed to. Talk about their confidence, where they are right now, understanding their role on your team.
Well, the challenge is trying to get those guys more minutes, because offensively they're very sound, and they are guys that make plays for us, and they both can make shots. And, I've spent some time with each of those guys making sure that even though their minutes aren't probably where they'd like them to be, that mentally and emotionally that they remain completely 100% invested, because they recognize, and I keep telling them, that they're going to be counted on. And I thought it was significant that Winston came in and made the shot that he made, having sat for so long. But again, our staff has kept those guys ready. And, even Ivan Lukic made a shot at Northeastern in the first half and didn't get in the game in the second half. So our guys recognize, because we talk about it so much, how much we value our bench, how much we respect what they do, the difficult role that they're in, but we expect them when they get their opportunity to come through. The issue for both Joey and Winston is they're not as long or as big or as physical as the guys that they're now playing behind. And there are issues. They've hurt us a little bit defensively. And I think even in this last game, Joey had opportunities that he was inside of some bigger guys. He just couldn't get the ball. He's just too small sometimes, particularly when we're in zone. Neither one of those guys are great defensive guys in our zone. So in that particular game, we played a lot of zone. Neither guy got in the second half very much.
Saturday's game seemed to be very emotional for a variety of reasons. How would you evaluate how your players were able to control those emotions at times when it needed to the most?
Yeah, you know what? I try and make every game equal. I don't put any more into any one game than any other game. To be honest with you, I think it's as much with Hofstra's mentality playing against them. I do think they make it somewhat personal. They make it emotional, and it's palpable. I think you feel it. Like it's you don't have to look very far to see, there's a rage kind of, on with the other team, and whether that impacted us or not, but it's unusual. It is that way, and it's not just it's been that way every time I played against Coach Mihalik's teams. He does an unbelievable job getting his team ready. And, maybe if there's an issue for me with my team, maybe my team hasn't been as ready. You can't say that about Hofstra's team or Joe Mihalik's teams the entire time. His teams are ready. And hopefully my teams will be for the rest of the year. But I think a lot of that was coming from the other team.
You mentioned as a coaching staff how nice it was to see pieces come together in one game. How satisfying was this past weekend, and I guess how is that kind of fueling you guys moving forward into the rest of conference play?
I think I said we weren't unafraid about going on the road, and we haven't been all year. I am a little pessimistic about home games coming up. We have 7 more of them, so I recognize what we have to do. But again, I think our team is learning. We're growing. They're getting to understand that every game is going to be a war. And if there was one thing where I probably didn't do a good enough job, our guys didn't understand the first 2 home conference games, what exactly I was talking about. I think now they recognize every game is an absolute war. It's just going to be a battle. And again, I've said this time and again, we're not the only league that's going through it. Now, watch the end of the Virginia game last night. They're going through it. They see it. It's the way that it is. And just because you might have a little bit of an edge on paper doesn't really mean anything. The other teams are ready, and games are very even. The teams are very evenly matched. We were ready this past weekend, and our guys were emotionally ready. For me, other than scouting and giving our guys tendencies, my biggest challenge at home games is making sure that we are of the level emotionally. And I don't think that'll be a problem for Thursday night's game. No, there's not any one guy. We break down scouting. Every assistant has a third of the games to scout. What can become interesting, and I just went through this for the last hour and a half, is if there's a difference of opinion. I think there's great knowledge on my staff, so there can be a difference of opinion how to attack certain players or schemes that we're going to face. And it's typically implementing the defensive game plan. Because we're not the most talented team physically, we don't have unbelievable quickness, we don't have a rim protector. Very often we're trying to debate the best way to protect the lane or the three-point line, but we're always cognizant of the fact we have to protect the rim because we don't have great rim protection. And so, we have some interesting conversations as a staff that can be upbeat. I
guess at this point you'd be happy if you guys were just playing on the road every single game.
Well, we got enough road games that will be tested, and I think we're going to go into these last, is it 6 now, home games, or 6 we have left in the convo. I've made it personally a big deal that we get the students here for these games, and when I go back and finish practice, that will be my next agenda on my to-do list, is how to get this group, this student body, in the building on Thursday night. And I think if we can get them, in the building, in those seats, that I won't have to worry as much about the emotional mentality of our group. So I'm excited about the home games. We have a challenging home game schedule. I like where our group is, and I think you hear me say that all the time. We haven't thrown many clunkers out there, save the second half against Elon, so hopefully that'll continue to be the case. Well, I do feel like we've put ourselves in a position to keep the group entertained, but now we have to do it. It's you could talk the talk, and we've done that on campus in the dorms with the students, but now you got to go show them, how good a team we can be, and we haven't done that every game in the convo. I'm aware of it. So it starts with Thursday night. It really starts with practice in an hour. We've got to go put it together, play as hard as we can, as hard as we ever have. We've got to play consistently. We've got to play unselfishly. And we have to play for the people in the stands more than we're playing for ourselves. And when we do that, I think we'll get the students.
Last thing for you, we got 6 teams tied for first place in the season. Bill Mahalik said, it's even better than he thought. He thought the league was going to be great. Any surprises at this point?
Well, I don't think there's any surprises. Elon's better than I thought they would be because they lost a terrific freshman last year. I think they're a little better. Drexel's a little banged up. Their record's not where I thought it would be. And if you told me that Delaware was going to lose a good player in Shavarsky Corbett, I'm not terribly surprised by them. So the two surprises really is Elon's better. I'm not surprised that Charleston's better. I'm not one bit surprised. But I am a little surprised that Elon is an absolute handful. And if you told me that Drexel was going to lose a good player to an injury and that Delaware was going to lose a good player, to me the only surprise is that Elon is a handful for everybody in our league.
Coach, you mentioned player development early on. What can you say about Jackson Kent and how he's developed over the past 3 years as a player and how he's sort of grown into his role?
Well, I think Jackson has developed a lot as a player. What we need him to be is a more confident offensive player. as a defensive player, he's really made a significant jump, which has helped all these numbers defensively make a step forward from a year ago. And he's a better defensive rebounder. Jackson's confidence on offense, oddly, is not quite where it was a year ago. But I thought this past weekend was a step in the right direction. So I'm really hopeful that he can continue to make improvements just in terms of confidence, because his skill level is good enough to be a 12, 13, or 18 points a game guy in any one game. So Jackson's developed physically. He's developed defensively. Really, we just need his confidence to be at an all-time high.
And the same thing for Joey McClain. I know they played together at High Point Christian. What could you say about Joey's game over the past 2 seasons?
Joey doesn't lack for confidence. That's the one thing I would say to you about Joey. And I think he's completely unmarked by any situations. Whether we're on the home or on the road, we're playing in front of a big crowd or no crowd, Joey McClain just plays. Like he's completely unencumbered by circumstance or environment. And it's really kind of remarkable. He's probably the least impacted by home or road, whether or not he missed his first shot or made. To me, it's kind of we're trying to figure out how to motivate him to get this game to a higher level. And when I watch Joey in practice in a game, he's just out there having fun. And there are times I'd like him to play a little differently, with a little more care, a little more thought. But he has confidence. So. And he's got skill on the offensive end. The issue is trying to make sure that he continues to develop defensively the way Jackson has.
So is there any sort of connection that you saw when you were recruiting Jackson?
Between Jackson and Joey, no, because Joey really developed as a senior and had a tremendous senior season scoring the ball. And both of those guys had great senior seasons, which is why we wanted to recruit him. Jackson we got early, and Joey we got late at the end of his senior year. But McClain's senior season was tremendous and really scored the ball and did it against the best teams in the state of North Carolina. So, Joey's impact on our team is really significant when we could put him in the game. And again, he had a tremendous first half at Northeastern, helped us get a big lead. And he's going to have some great halves for us. We need him to just play full games and play at both ends.
And I also noticed that Ron Curry and Matt Reese both go from
Paul Six High School.
Do you like seeing that when you can maybe make one recruiting trip and notice two guys you'd like to?
Yeah, especially if they're from great high school teams. If we can see one player and then go back and get kids from the same high school team, and winning high school programs is significant. Joe and Jackson come from a very, very successful high school program. Actually, it's probably the most talented team in the state of North Carolina this year because they have some transfers and won McDonald's All-American this year. And Paul Six has been successful for a long time. I've always watched St. Anthony kids in Jersey City. So anytime you can get kids from winning programs, that's very significant.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay.
Yeah, Coach, I hear there was a kid there in the 80s that really elevated that Paul the Six program quite a bit. So, all right, Coach, thank you very much. The Dukes are at home on Thursday night against the Drexel Dragons, a 7 o'clock tip-off, and then travel to Elon, North Carolina to face the Phoenix, and that is a 7 o'clock game on Saturday night as well. Thank you for coming out. We'll be back next Monday here at O'Neill's Grill for more Fan and Press Luncheons with JMU men's and women's basketball coaches.